Hello, I'm Miranda Kahn.
And I'm John Bachman. Ahead today on Newsmax Now. Why do you think Will is taking things this far and saying these things?
Because he doesn't like the fact that what we wrote about Ronald Reagan goes against his narrative that Reagan was a semi-god.
Our exclusive interview with Bill O'Reilly over the ongoing feud between him and George Will. Does the cable news king think Will should quit after their public spat?
He took a knife and he went after a friend and he lunged that knife into the stomach of his friends, but lo and behold, it hit the belt.
Donald Trump is lunging at Ben Carson and goes on a wild rant for an hour and a half. The question is, will this help Trump or will it hurt him? Our roundtable weighs in.
And in today's American Moment, we take a look back at Rosa Parks and the Supreme Court case that ended segregation on public buses on this day 59 years ago. And we welcome you to the Friday edition of Newsmax Now. It's great to have everybody here with us.
It is. Donald Trump, as you heard, let Ben Carson really have it last night during a 95-minute speech in Fort Dodge, Iowa. He called him a liar and made comments about Carson's pathological temper.
Plus, the Pentagon says that it's fairly certain a drone strike killed the ISIS terrorist known as Jihadi John. We'll talk about those stories in just a second, but we want to let you know about a developing story playing out right now in Paris, France. There are new reports about a mass shooting at a restaurant. Police also say there are reports of an explosion at a bar near a Paris stadium. French media reports that several deaths have occurred in that restaurant. We're hearing at least 11, maybe as many as 23 people dead right now. And there are also reports of hostages being taken. Two anonymous police officials are confirming the shooting and the explosion to the Associated Press. We'll keep an eye on this story and let you know if anything else comes up.
Now to ISIS. The Pentagon says a militant known as Jihadi John is now dead.
We know for a fact that the weapon system hit its intended target, and that the personnel who were on the receiving end of that weapon system were in fact killed.
Jihadi John's real name is believed to be Mohammed Emwazi. He's a British citizen who's appeared in several ISIS videos, beheading Western journalists and aid workers. The military believes he was killed by a Hellfire missile in the Syrian town of Raqqa, but officials have not formally declared he's dead. Army Colonel Steve Warren says Emwazi was not regarded as a top ISIS military figure, but his death's important because of his international notoriety.
He was a primary recruitment tool for that organization. We're all familiar with the ghastly videos, the absolute barbarism that he displayed times against American citizens. I mean, this guy was a human animal, and killing him is probably making the world a little bit better place.
The White House says if Jihadi John is in fact dead, it shows the U.S. is making important progress in the fight against ISIS.
Well, you know what they say about karma, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on now and shift gears to talk about Donald Trump and that speech last night that he made, a lot of it directed squarely at Ben Carson. Trump blasted Carson. This was in Fort Dodge, Iowa.
Yeah, he also criticized Iowans and the American people, calling them stupid. Let's listen to it.
How stupid are the people of Iowa? How stupid are the people of the country to believe this crap? So here's the good news. He's now saying all of that stuff happened because otherwise he's a liar.
So, you know, this isn't the first time that Trump has called the people of Iowa stupid. And I thought it was really telling the last time it happened. But this whole speech, and we're going to play a couple more clips, but if you watch it in its entirety, you can't turn away. It's one of those things, you put the popcorn in the microwave and get ready to be entertained by Donald Trump.
He is a very compelling figure, and this is, as far as that goes, this is probably one of his best piece of work right there, because you can't watch away. It's like a car accident.
All right, but, you know, calling the voters of Iowa stupid in Iowa, and you see kind of the crowd behind Donald Trump. Those are the people that they handpicked to put in that situation. Normally it's the cheering section. A lot of blank looks on the faces of those Trump supporters behind them. not quite knowing what to think. All right, here's the next clip we want to play for you.
But he took the knife, he went like this, and he plunged it into the belt. And amazingly, the belt stayed totally flat. And the knife broke. How stupid are the people of Iowa? How stupid are the people of the country to believe this crap?
All right, so that's Trump talking about the story that Ben Carson keeps reiterating over and over again, plunging the knife into his friend Bob's or family member Bob's belt buckle. It didn't work. You know, but again, you know, so much of that narrative about the Ben Carson thing, that was Carson's people attacking the media. But this is not the media doing this to Ben Carson. This is Donald Trump, the guy who's up there at the top of the polls with Carson as well. And, you know, again, I equated this to maybe a suicide bombing what Donald Trump was doing, wanting to kind of not be in this race anymore. Maybe he's had enough. You know, Donald Trump is not going to go out. He's not going to fade away. You know, he's going to go out in a blaze of glory, and I think if he's going to go out, he might take Ben Carson with him. So maybe that's what he was doing last night.
Let's also show that he put out an Instagram ad hitting Carson.
I had a large camping knife, and I tried to stab him in the abdomen.
What? Does it fit with the guy who you knew? No.
So yeah, that's an Instagram ad now that Trump has put out.
Clearly he's very threatened by him.
I think it will be very telling. A lot of people are questioning whether or not Trump is really in the game because he has not spent a lot of money on advertising in either Iowa or New Hampshire. And that's what his campaign says. But when you start to fall in the polls a little bit at a time.
And he started to buy some ads.
On the radio.
Right.
He's not on TV with any $1 million ad buys yet. So folks are saying, is he really invested in the presidential run? Question marks, question marks, question marks. We'll see. I just, you know, we've all been wrong before about the beginning of the end. I'm not saying this is the beginning of the end. Perhaps it's the end of the beginning. Who knows, to quote Winston Churchill. All right, let's take a look at some other top stories today. Topping your news front this hour, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear the first abortion case it has heard since 2007. The justices have now agreed to hear a challenge by abortion providers to parts of a restrictive Republican-backed Texas law. The abortion providers claim the Texas law is aimed at shutting clinics down. The law requires clinics to have hospital-grade facilities. It also requires clinic physicians to have admitting privileges at hospitals within 30 miles of the said clinic. It's the first abortion case before the High Court since they ruled 5-4 to uphold a federal law banning late-term abortions. Convicted murderer David Sweat is in court today facing charges for his prison escape over the summer. He pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts of first-degree escape and a felony count of promoting prison contraband. Sweat and his fellow inmate Richard Matt spent 22 days on the lam after busting out of prison back in June. Border Patrol agents shot and killed Matt, but Sweat was captured a few days later. Prison worker Joyce Mitchell also pleaded guilty to helping these men escape. Last week, a judge ordered her to pay $80,000 in restitution to the prison.
A New York jury finds an accused mobster not guilty of crimes related to a brazen airport heist back in 1978. That heist inspired the mafia movie Goodfellas, great movie. The jury cleared Vince and Nassaro of murder, extortion, and other crimes.
The Secret Service officer is now charged with sending obscene texts and pictures to a 14-year-old. Police say Lee Robert Moore thought he was texting an adult, but she was really just sending pictures to to a teenager, but he was actually just sending pictures to an undercover cop. Moore also admitted to texting other minors using a social media app. The Secret Service placed him on administrative leave this week. The Pentagon has also fired a top military aide after he was accused of misconduct. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter declined to elaborate on what the allegations actually included, but he removed his senior military assistant, Lieutenant General Ron Lewis, from his position yesterday. Lewis works closely with Carter. He accompanied him on his trip to Asia last week.
We already have a Bush and Clinton running. Why not throw in another familiar name? How about Mitt Romney? The Washington Post reports some Republicans are considering drafting the former presidential candidate over fears Donald Trump and Ben Carson, if nominated, would end up losing in the general election. Romney insists he will not run. As if Benghazi and her personal email server wasn't enough, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton finds herself back in the hot seat again, this time for a personal story she continues to share about trying to join the Marines.
He says to me, and he says to me, maybe the dogs will take you, meaning the Army.
Clinton has shared the tale now for decades and decided to retell it recently to a group in New Hampshire that you see right there. The Washington Post tried to fact check that story. It couldn't find any documentation to prove if it is or isn't true.
California police officer got quite the surprise, I should say, when he pulled over a car only to realize no one was behind the wheel. It was one of those Google self-driving cars. It was driving too slow. The officer spoke to a passenger in the car, and in the end, he opted not to issue a ticket. Google maintains that all of its self-driving cars have a perfect driving record. Little awkward, I assume.
Yeah.
Right there. Ben Carson is now responding to Donald Trump's bizarre rant yesterday in Iowa.
Now that he's completed his gratuitous attack, why don't we press on and deal with the real issues? You know, the reason that I'm in this race is because there are some real profound issues that affect the trajectory of our country right now.
As we mentioned earlier, during a 95-minute speech, Trump called Carson a liar and talked about Carson's, quote, pathological temper, and that is the subject of today's rehash.
Here's what Fox News Corporation CEO Rupert Murdoch had to say. Trump finally loses it in 95-minute rant, calls Carson character like a child molester. Carson, beautiful put down, quote, pray for him.
Bill O'Reilly, host of The O'Reilly Factor, who we'll hear from in just a few minutes during our exclusive interview, says Trump compares Carson to a child molester.
And Brian Buehler, a senior editor at The New Republic, says Trump's anti-Carson, anti-Iowa tirade was unbecoming, but it was also correct. Just ahead, a Newsmax exclusive, we go one-on-one with Fox News host Bill O'Reilly about his attacks from George Will over the book Killing Reagan.